Qatar is a member of OPEC, as are most of the countries that are cutting ties with Qatar. But will this actually impact gas prices in particular?
Well, we've already seen an impact. They were up about 1%, both the WTI and the Brent prices, which are the benchmark rates around the world. But what's interesting is that if this drags on longer, it could actually have the opposite impact, because any rift in OPEC historically is seen as the cartel breaking down, and that would basically push all the different members to then increase their output to try and get more of the market share and possibly drive prices down.
Interesting. So where else, though, can we expect to see some economic pain?
The biggest impact we've seen so far is at the Qatar Stock Exchange. It had its worst performance today than it has since 2009, about 8%. And the biggest names took the biggest beatings. What's really interesting is that it's not just the oil companies, it's also the construction companies, the consumer goods makers like toothpaste and food. Just about all of those companies were impacted. And even the investment funds, because they're heavily reliant on their neighbors to bring them access to the world.
It's interesting because oftentimes business relations manage to stay out of politics. But as you mentioned, construction companies, consumer goods producers, they are taking a hit. How and why will they pay a price?
On the face of it, they don't have a lot of trade with the region. With the UAE, less than 9% of their actual trade with the world is with the UAE. However, they're heavily dependent on their neighbors to bring in products from the rest of the world and also to send them out. Saudi Arabia, case in point, 40% of Qatar's food comes through a single border crossing with Saudi Arabia. And last year, when Saudi Arabia put a temporary ban on the export of chicken to control domestic prices, it took 1 day for chicken prices to go up by about 50% in Qatar.
And arguably the most famous company in Qatar is their airline. Will they feel the heat?
They're in trouble. 150 global destinations are served by Qatar Airways. About a fourth of those are in the countries that have now cancelled those flights. So first of all, those are done. But then also routes flying to South America, Southern Europe, Africa, they need the airspace that they now don't have. So at the very least, it's going to be a lot more expensive to access those routes.